Imagine waking up one day and realizing something terrifying. Your life doesn't feel like your life. You go to school, to work, to obligations, to conversations, to routines, and it all moves. But none of it feels like you. You're there, but not present. You're acting, but not choosing. You're living, but not alive. It's like someone else is behind the wheel, and you're just the quiet passenger, watching your own existence pass by through a fogged-up window. And here is the dark truth nobody ever says out loud. This feeling is not random. It has a psychology, a pattern, a blueprint. People who feel like their life isn't really theirs share hidden traits, invisible wounds, and an internal world that has been shaped slowly, quietly, painfully by years of emotional suppression, forced adaptation, and a lifetime of becoming what others needed instead of who they are. This script is about them, and maybe it's about you. The first sign. You feel like a character written by someone else. People who feel this way rarely notice when it starts, because it doesn't begin with huge trauma. It begins with tiny betrayals of the self. A yes when you wanted to say no. A smile when you were exhausted. A polite nod when something inside you was screaming. A decision that wasn't really yours, but you made it anyway because it kept the peace. Over time, these micro-abandonments add up, and you begin slipping out of your own life one compromise at a time. By adulthood, many people don't even realize they've shaped their entire identity around expectations. What their parents wanted, what their friends approved of, what teachers praised, what society rewarded, what relationships demanded, and slowly, they became something terrifying. A curated version of themselves. A performance. An avatar. A mask. Not a person. The inner split. The you that lives and the you that watches here is where it gets psychological. When your true self is suppressed for too long, the mind creates a split. The functional self that handles life, and the hidden self that actually feels life. The functional self is obedient, social, adaptable. It gets things done. It doesn't cause trouble. It meets expectations. But the hidden self, that's the part of you that wakes up at 2 a.m. feeling empty. That's the voice that whispers, "This isn't who I am." That's the energy that feels trapped behind your eyes, watching everything through a thick glass. This split is why people say, "I feel like I'm watching myself talk. I feel like I'm doing things automatically. I feel disconnected from my own choices." This isn't laziness. It isn't being dramatic. It's identity fatigue, a psychological exhaustion caused by living a life that doesn't match your inner truth. The trade-off. Safety over authenticity. For many, this feeling began as survival. Children adapt to stay safe. Teens adapt to be accepted. Adults adapt to avoid conflict. At some point, authenticity becomes a luxury they never learned to afford. So they choose the familiar cage over the frightening freedom of being real. And each year, they drift further from themselves until one day they wake up, look in the mirror, and don't recognize the person staring back. That's when the question appears, silently, painfully. How did I lose myself in my own life? You want to know the strangest part about people who feel like their life isn't theirs? They don't notice it happening at first. It starts quietly, like someone slowly turning down the volume on their soul. One day they wake up and realize something terrifying. They've become a side character in their own story. Not by choice. Not because they're weak, but because somewhere along the way, they learned a dangerous psychological habit. They built their identity based on what others needed from them, not who they actually are. Maybe it was parents who controlled everything. Maybe it was a partner who decided things for them. Maybe it was society telling them, "Don't be too loud. Don't be too different. Don't be too much." And so they adapted. They complied. They made themselves smaller. But the human psyche can only tolerate self-abandonment for so long before it breaks. And that's where the psychological split begins. The first sign. They run their life on autopilot. When a person feels like their life isn't theirs, they stop making choices. They execute routines. They wake up, work, scroll, eat, sleep. Not because they want to, but because it's expected, because it maintains peace, because it keeps conflict away. It feels like driving a car, but someone else is holding the steering wheel. And the scariest part, they're still smiling, still joking, still acting normal, because the performance is all they know. The second sign, they outsource their authority. People with this mindset constantly ask others, "Is this okay? Do you think I should? What would you do? Does this make sense?" They're not stupid. They're not incapable. They simply learned long ago that their own decisions didn't matter. And now, even as adults, their brain refuses to trust itself. This psychological dependency is not weakness. It is learned survival. To avoid rejection, to avoid disappointment, to avoid being too much. The third sign, they feel like an imposter in their own skin. This is the part nobody talks about. People who feel like their life isn't theirs often experience anxiety that feels misplaced, emptiness that comes out of nowhere, a sense that time is passing, but nothing feels real, a quiet grief for a life they never lived. It's not depression, not laziness, not a lack of ambition. It's identity displacement, the psychological condition where you live a life shaped by everyone except yourself. Their mind feels like a rented apartment. Their personality feels like borrowed clothes. Their choices feel like they belong to a stranger. But here's the truth most people never hear. This is not the end of their story. In fact, the moment a person realizes something is wrong, the moment they whisper, "This life doesn't feel like mine," that is the moment the real self begins to wake up. Because the psyche can be suppressed, but it can't be erased. There's a strange moment that happens to people who feel like their life isn't really theirs. A moment they rarely talk about, but one that follows them like a shadow. It's the moment when they look in the mirror and feel absolutely nothing. Not connection, not recognition, not belonging, just a quiet, unsettling distance, like they're staring at a character they play, not a person they are. This is one of the core psychological signatures of identity detachment. When your life stops feeling like your own, your reflection becomes a symbol of everything you can't explain. The face staring back is familiar, but the life behind it is not. It's a silent dissonance. The body is yours, but the story isn't. People who live this way often describe a secret sensation. "I feel like I'm performing a version of myself I never agreed to." Maybe it was shaped by expectations, maybe by trauma or pressure, maybe by a family that needed you to play a role long before you knew what a role even was. Children who grow up needing to fit the needs of the environment, the calm one, the strong one, the responsible one, the successful one, often grow into adults who can play any part except the one they actually want. So they master the art of imitation. They laugh on cue. They agree to things they don't want. They follow paths that don't feel natural. They adjust their personality depending on who's in the room. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, they drift further away from themselves. This is why the mirror becomes uncomfortable. It's not the face that's the problem. It's the story that doesn't match it. Psychologists often describe this state as a form of self-alienation, a psychological separation between the person you are internally and the person you are externally. And here's the devastating paradox. The people who feel this the most are usually the ones who learned early in life that being their authentic self wasn't safe, welcomed, or understood. So they created a mask, a protective identity, a version of themselves that kept the peace but cost them the feeling of ownership over their own existence. And now, as adults, they feel like passengers in their own mind. But here's the truth they never fully realize. When you feel disconnected from yourself, your mind isn't malfunctioning. It's signaling that the life you're living was built for survival, not fulfillment. The performance so many of these people describe is not weakness, it's adaptation. It was built to protect them. But protection has a price. You stay alive, but you stop feeling like you're living. And so they stand in front of the mirror, sensing a quiet fracture between body and identity, between movement and meaning, a fracture they don't know how to name. But that fracture is not the end. It's the beginning of the mind trying to return home, The first step toward reclaiming a life you feel disconnected from is recognizing that the person you've been playing was never a failure, just a version built for survival. There is a moment, a quiet, devastating moment when a person suddenly notices that the choices shaping their life were never truly theirs. It doesn't come with panic. It doesn't come with screaming. It arrives like a soft voice saying, "This script wasn't written by you." People who feel like their life isn't really theirs often describe a strange internal shift. It can happen while brushing their teeth at night, or walking home, or staring at their own reflection. A moment where they realize they don't recognize the person they became. They're living in a house they didn't choose, working a job they never wanted, acting out a personality built to please people who no longer matter or who never mattered at all. And the worst part, they can't even remember when the original version of them disappeared, because it didn't happen suddenly. It happened through 1,000 tiny compromises. A yes said when they wanted to say no. A dream postponed just for now. A part of their personality quieted because someone else didn't approve. A boundary abandoned because conflict felt terrifying. And step by step, the center of their life drifted away from them, like a house slowly sinking into sand. This is why they often feel distant from their own experiences, detached, out of place in their own story. They're not absent. They're not lost. They're disconnected from the person they were supposed to become. Psychologists sometimes call this self-alienation, a silent fracture between the life you live and the life that fits your soul. But let's go deeper, because this isn't just about choices. It's about something much more painful. They were never taught to trust their own inner voice. Maybe they grew up in an environment where their preferences were dismissed, where adults said, "Don't be difficult," or "Just do what I say," or "Why can't you be more like them?" So they learned early, your desires don't matter. Your instincts can't be trusted. Someone else knows better than you. And now, as adults, they follow rules that no longer apply. They obey ghosts. The ghost of a parent's expectations. The ghost of old judgments. The ghost of who they should be. People who feel like their life isn't theirs often carry this invisible weight. The pressure to perform a version of themselves that was scripted by everyone else. Friends, family, school, society, even strangers. They became an actor whose role was assigned at birth. And deep down they know it. They're waiting for someone to whisper, "You can stop playing this character now." But no one ever does. So the person continues performing, smiling, achieving, pretending while something inside collapses quietly. Yet here's the strangest and most painful twist. Everyone around them thinks they're fine, even successful, even admirable. Because people who feel like their life isn't theirs often become excellent at looking stable. They become reliable. They become competent. They become whatever others need them to be. But inside, they feel like an understudy forced to play the lead in a show they never auditioned for. And every day, the curtain rises, and they think, "This isn't my life. This isn't my script. Why am I still here?" There's a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when a person who spent years feeling like a guest in their own life finally realizes something terrifying. No one is coming to return your life to you. You must take it back yourself. For people who feel like their life isn't theirs, this is the hardest truth of all. Because they aren't lazy. They aren't unmotivated. They aren't fragile. They are psychologically displaced, pushed out of their own story by years of self-abandonment, emotional suppression, and trying to be who everyone else wanted them to be. But here's the twist. The moment you notice the displacement, you're already waking up. And the moment you start to question the life you're living, you're already taking the first step back toward yourself. So here is what reclaiming your life actually looks like, in real, human, non-romantic terms. 1. You stop pretending your numbness is normal. People who feel like their life isn't theirs often normalize emotional deadness. They call it being mature, not caring, or just being tired. But numbness is not a personality trait. It's a signal. It's the psyche saying, "You've been gone too long. Come back." 2. You begin noticing tiny sparks of selfhood. A song you used to love. A hobby you quit because life got too heavy. A sudden moment where you feel something real for 2 seconds. Those sparks matter. They are pieces of you trying to return. 3. You stop following the script you never wrote. For most people in this psychological state, their life is built from inherited expectations, emotional obligations, survival habits, roles assigned by others, versions of themselves they outgrew. Reclaiming your life means questioning every single one of them. Ask yourself, do I actually want this? If the answer is no, that is the beginning of freedom. 4. You allow yourself to desire again. People who feel disconnected from their own life often stop wanting anything, not because they don't have dreams, but because wanting hurts. Desire creates vulnerability. Vulnerability creates fear. Fear creates retreat. But the formula can run in reverse. A tiny, fragile desire can become the first doorway back into your own existence. 5. You let the old self die. On purpose this time. You didn't choose the first death. The slow fading, the drifting, the emotional evacuation, but the rebirth that you choose. And here's the truth no one tells you. The you who returns will not be the same you who disappeared. You'll be sharper, quieter inside, more self-owning, more resistant to other people's emotional gravity, more honest about what hurts, what matters, and what must change. You will stop living on autopilot. You will stop surrendering your choices. You will stop apologizing for existing. And one day, maybe unexpectedly, you'll wake up and realize, this life feels like mine again. Not perfect, not fully healed, not always easy, but yours. And that is the moment people spend years searching for. The moment when the observer becomes the participant again. The ghost becomes the author. The stranger becomes the owner. And the life that once felt borrowed finally returns home.